Okay, and we're recording in action. All right, hey, Dr. Mary, welcome to the virtual. Okay, now I'm going to cut that one. Okay,
That's fine.
all right, Dr. Mary, welcome to the virtual couch.
Thank you so much, Tony, for having me.
No, I'm really excited about this, and we were talking a little bit off mic, and I really want to a listener, they're going to think, man, Tony's a crummy interviewer today, but I really want to get to some of the things that we were even talking about off mic, and really get to a lot of like the tips and tools and strategies you have. So if at any point you feel like I am going off in the weeds, I used to teach early morning seminary, and I would say, no wrong answer or whatever, but sometimes I would say, that's a great question, but let me answer it this way. So if you do that, Dr. Mary, I know that you're directing me in a different place. Is that okay?
Sure, yes.
Okay. So, so we're here to talk about, well, actually, what are we here to talk about today?
Well, we're here to talk about COVID-19. It's on the forefront of all of our minds. And at the same time as we're tired of hearing about it, we keep wanting to know more about it.
Yeah.
And we don't know how to deal with this new situation. So my hope is to be able to speak to parents and give them resources that they can really translate and share with their kids to help ease this experience that's new for all of us.
Well, and I love that you're kind of going right to parents. I mean, as a therapist, what I have noticed this week, kids are at home, and parents have a lot of time with kids, and and there are a lot of questions, and I feel like a lot of parents aren't quite sure what to do or say, and they're having their own experiences, and
Right.
right, and not sure how to even translate that to kids. So right out of the gate, I mean, would you say that? I'm assuming this would be a podcast or a video. We're both going to put this on our YouTube channels that people could sit down and watch with their kids.
Yes, I think so. Although I'm going to direct more of my messages to parents directly, because I feel like,
Okay.
especially with younger kids, it's the parents that become the translators of the information to the kids, and the kids receive it best from their own parents, I believe. Although it's so nice to take in certain information and resources together, but I think my message is mostly directed to parents and kind of guiding them about how to work with their kids.
Okay. No, that's perfect. Can I start with asking a question for a friend?
Sure.
That's my way of saying that. Really, am I the only one that we talk so much about coronavirus, and now we're talking about COVID-19,
Right.
and what's the difference? Is there a difference?
Well, coronavirus is the general name for the class of virus.
Okay.
And so there have been various types. Coronavirus is the same virus that causes the common cold, but there have been different genetic mutations within this RNA virus that has shown up in different places in different ways. And so it just gets named in with a distinct name. So there's the SARS coronavirus, there's the MERS of coronavirus. And so initially this was called SARS coronavirus 2, and it's also been called the novel coronavirus. It's also been called the Wuhan coronavirus. It's
Yeah.
also now called COVID-19. So all just synonyms for the same thing. But really, the way that I kind of think about it in my own mind, although it's a very simplistic and sort of inaccurate way to think about it, because viruses are actually not living particles. They are more like parasitic structures that take over our host cells. But I think about it a little bit like dog breeds, that they're all just different kind of breeds of the same, but have very different personalities, very different ways they show up. And what's really unique about COVID-19 is that it's new, and so we don't know how it's going to go, and so that's really has made people pause. Also, it's a virus that has shown to cause some very significant disease and to be very contagious, and so of course this gets the authorities
Yeah.
in infection control very alarmed. And so it is something to pay attention to. It's not just your run-of-the-mill common cold that's only going to affect a handful of people. So I believe as we watch, the different areas of the country that have, and areas of the world that have experienced this a little bit ahead of us, then we do need to take lesson and take notice.
Yeah, I love the dog breed part. I don't know if it's my own personal, battle with ADD, but it's I'm not going to say a dog breed type because I'll get hate mail about, if I call it a Rottweiler or a, whatever.
Right,
It,
right,
it's this new dog, and right now it's going to the bathroom everywhere. So we got to figure
right.
out what we can do to deal with this. So what are the basic precautions you recommend as a pediatrician?
So it is very important to just get on the same page with our kids and really take the recommendations from the CDC seriously, that social distancing is important right now, and maybe for months. So I know that a lot of organizations are kind of holding the reins and saying, oh, maybe it's just going to be a couple weeks, and
I believe that.
not wanting to cancel things. But realistically speaking, this likely is going to affect our lives for months or more, but I think that the social distancing is very important, and I will include on my website and share with you a link to a wonderful article explaining why social distancing works. And it's really a matter of flattening the curve of number of cases at a given time, and so the health system is not overwhelmed. So we hear of cases in Italy and China and elsewhere where medical professionals are having to provide medical care in tents and
Yeah.
having to choose between critical cases to decide who gets the ventilator. And these things are real. And so we can help not overwhelm our health system if we can just let the virus creep in at the slowest rate possible.
Yeah.
So other measures are good hand washing, that 20-second with soap hand wash that's going, being thorough through the web spaces, under the fingernails, teaching your kids to sing a song while they wash their hands.
And I love all this. So I like to I have a very real example with, I see a handful of clients that are doctors or nurses or in the healthcare industry. And one did lay out to me yesterday this concept of, if he's going back to work, and then if, they're trying to get all the supplies they need to protect them, the people that are kind of working on the front lines. And if there are a lot of people, then there can be a potential where the respiratory therapists are overwhelmed, or there's not enough of the ventilators, or if somebody in the medical field gets contaminated, they have to then quarantine themselves as well. And so it really, I felt it. I mean, I really, not that I didn't believe it, but I felt it for the first time of, okay, really the slower that we can have this thing kind of progress, it really is the better. Because I do have people often in my office that say, let's just do it. Let's just get it done with, bring it on. I want it. I'm going to go touch every doorknob and every handle. And man, bless your heart for wanting to.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. Yeah, it's not a good idea. So I know, I appreciate that. I'm glad you're going to share the article on your website too. I think that would be great.
Right.
So can I ask you your opinion?
Mm-hmm.
And so I hear then people say that they're, even my kids' friends, that some of them, they're teenagers and their parents won't let a kid go out, versus the parents that are basically feeling like, hey, it's spring break, it's not going to affect the kids. And so, just make sure you wash your hands a few more times.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yes.
What's your thought? What are your opinion?
Well, I think that the more we can truly commit to the social distancing, the true social distancing, the better it will be. So if we, continue with our play dates, continue with, though we're not meeting in a classroom, contacting all the moms of the kids in our class and say, hey, let's get together and play, then we're just negating the effort. So yes, maybe it's not realistic to only stay in our family bubble, but if we can have a very contained, agreed upon bubble where we get together with one family, or we only get together, or we just stay with our immediate family, that is reasonable. But I do think that it is a bit cavalier to just go on our merry way and continue with the social interactions, even at a smaller scale, because they're all just touch points for times for this virus to spread.
Okay. And I appreciate that too. And I feel like in the therapist world, in the pediatrician world, I mean, even if it's just, get through the next time that your kid says, but I really want to go out, it's don't all or nothing think. I mean, we'll kind of maybe get to some cognitive distortions here in a little bit too. but
Right.
it's just, be as present as you can in the moment. And because I think people will feel like, my goodness, this is impossible. They're asking me, again, if they can go with their friends, and fine, just go do whatever you want. And no, I mean, we can work on those in a situation by situation basis, one at a time. Okay, so maybe can we kind of get to some of your tips? I would love for you to just kind of take the reins and drive here, and just yeah, what are your tips?
Well, I'd like to just go back one
Okay,
step and share just a couple more points
okay,
about the recommendations with COVID-19. So it's still very important to do the basic healthy practices, the eating healthy, the getting rest, and having exercise. And I think too, um, even though we're social distancing, that doesn't mean we have to be socially isolated, because that is not healthy either. So we can connect virtually. Also, we can potentially, based on what our options are in our local area, we can potentially go places more remote. So last weekend, my family went on a hike up in a canyon, and we were the only ones there, but
wow,
our kids were able to run and play and connect with nature. And so that felt a lot more freeing than feeling like we cannot leave
sure,
the
yeah.
threshold of our home.
I love
So
that. Yeah, I love that. Just being a little more creative.
yes,
Okay.
yes,
And I had a client yesterday tell me that he's playing a game. I hear it, Settlers of Catan or something, via
yeah,
Zoom. Like, we're doing our interview
yeah,
with
right,
a couple of friends. So I mean, I
yeah,
thought, okay, creative, right?
yes.
Yeah.
And we really are creative. And I think that kind of moving into some of the other recommendations, it's important to trust ourselves, that we have ideas within ourselves.
Mm,
I know that there's so many resources showing up on social media about do this, go there, this is free now, and it can be very overwhelming. And so I think we need to recognize that aside from all of that, we ourselves can come up with solutions for our own family. And even if we never looked at those ideas,
yeah.
um, we would probably be fine, because we are creative, we are resourceful, and we can be in tune with our own feelings about what our family needs. So, you know, I was looking online, and I started seeing all these color coded schedules for
Yeah.
the time with kids at home, and I thought, this is great. This is a great reminder that I need to start thinking about some structure for my family and for my kids. But I recognized quickly that after a certain point, I started to feel a constriction within
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah.
And it was time for me to stop looking at them, because they were not quite the right resource for me, because I'm more of a go with the flow kind of person. And I don't do well with a schedule that's like from 7 to 8, do this, from 8 to 9, do this. And also the realism of family life, the realistic, expectation of family life, it usually doesn't go that way either. So,
Yeah.
so, for myself, I thought, okay, I'm going to try to do, say I'm going to do 4 or 5 things a day, trying to do something fun, something educational, something where I'm being productive,
Yeah.
something that I'm doing something for myself and something for someone else. You know, that for me was something that just kind of put it to my level where I could go with the flow and recognize that I'm not even going to get to those 4 or 5 things every day.
And
But
that's perfectly fine, right? And I like where you're going here too. I feel like when people are reading all of these things, you're right. I feel like they feel that they're being told you should do this. If you're a good parent right now, you should be doing this, or you should have this structure, or and so I love that. I always say no one wants to be should on, but you being able to read that, and it's like these are suggestions, and you can take them in. And then I love what you said there. If I'm not a structured hour by hour person, noted, but there's some good ideas here.
Exactly. So I was kind of thinking this morning, it's kind of like if you pay for a ticket at Chuck-A-Rama or something like that, you don't have to be obligated to make yourself sick and then fill your plate over and over. Just go and get the good stuff
Yeah.
and go home.
You don't have to try the weird green bean thing that my grandma
Right.
does, right? No, that's a good point. I like that. Yeah.
So so that just deals with the idea of just trusting ourselves. I think
Yeah.
it's really important to trust ourselves and to take note of our own internal reactions and and let them be okay. So we don't need to feel guilty if we
Mhm.
feel stressed out about the idea of being home with our kids in a different way than we have been in the past. And we can acknowledge that things are not necessarily going to be ideal at every moment, but to just really be kind with ourselves and trust ourselves that we can get through this. So structure, I think, is a really important thing for families and kids in particular, because there's so many uncertainties
Mm.
around there, around this, that I think having some somewhat more certain things
Sure.
can be helpful, not constricting, dictated things that add tension, but just some things to hold on to and count on.
Yeah.
um, I also think it's so important to acknowledge, I focus in my consulting practice on helping kids with anxiety, and the goal here is not zero anxiety, because anxiety is a message to us, that something needs to happen.
Mm.
And so our anxiety reflects that we care. It reflects that we care that something is happening in the world, and we want our kids to care. We want to care. And so we don't want to shut that down.
Right.
And also, anxiety is something that motivates us to do wise things, to take the CDC recommendations, to make the recommended adjustments. So having a little bit of um, energy going towards this COVID-19 is not a pathologic thing. It's
Yeah.
actually a healthy thing. We need to recognize, what is the degree of healthy angst that I can feel towards this. But then with the rest, we'll talk about some tools to address letting go of the rest. But
Yeah.
but
Well,
honoring what's there.
I was doing a little bit of background on you, and you have a YouTube channel. You have a video there that about a month ago you were talking about COVID-19 and how to talk about this. And I really enjoyed one part. I wrote this down where, and I might not be quoting you exactly, but it was almost the anxiety worry to the amount that it drives healthy change.
Mhm.
Because you did a wonderful job of talking about, because then what happens when that worry becomes too much. And can you just give a quick lesson on cortisol? I talk about it so much in my
Yes.
podcast and my practice, but
Yes.
you're a physician, you have
Yes.
more authority than the therapist. So
Mhm.
talk about cortisol. What does that do?
Well, so, if we're so worried about um, beating this COVID-19, we actually might make ourselves more susceptible to it. So cortisol is a chemical that's released within our body when we have the stress response. And it's natural to um, feel stressed at times. But when cortisol is released, all kinds of things happen that, number one, make us less resourceful, because um, all kinds of changes happen with the stress response. Um, Changes in blood flow happen, where the blood is going more to our large muscle groups as if we're going to fight away some kind of enemy, um, less going to our thinking brain, where we can actually problem solve and be resourceful. Um,
So when
Also,
that additional worry happens, I mean, so what you're saying is, once the cortisol kind of takes over, I mean, I've always said that, I mean, that shuts down that whole prefrontal cortex, right? The logical part of the brain. And
right,
so
so
at
we're
that
just
point, yeah,
less resourced.
yeah,
And then also, we know that it affects our immune function.
okay,
And this would be not the best time to decrease our immune function with excessive worry. So there are physiologic reasons to try to stay calm. It's not just a good idea, just so we'll feel good.
yeah.
Um, there are physiologic reasons that staying calm will help us. And so I think that's important to recognize.
And I love what you were saying as we were beginning this talk about anxiety and cortisol, is telling someone not to worry about it. They don't magically go, oh, okay, I won't worry about it then. And then, no, I mean, we
Right.
do have to be able to have a conversation or make room
Right.
for the feelings.
Exactly. And so I think it is really important. We'll get into that in a minute about
Yeah.
some different strategies of specific ways that we can deal with this. So I think some other things that are really important in terms of dealing with kids and helping them through this time is giving them age appropriate information.
Okay.
So information that is you know, as accurate as we can find, can help us. Um, and there are a lot of wonderful resources to help parents teach kids about COVID-19, and I will share those resources with your audience and my audience.
Okay.
Um, I think that it's important not to overdo it on sensationalized media, and in fact, to be very selective in the media we share with our kids, because um, we can get caught in this constant checking and reviewing all these voices, and it's really not healthy to fixate on coronavirus. We need to stay informed, but not fixate on it. It's something we have to adapt to and figure in, but it doesn't need to become at the forefront of our faces
Right.
and block everything else out, because that can be paralyzing. So I think keeping kids informed is important, telling them why they're doing what they're doing, and helping them understand even the science and physiology of this disease, so they don't have to have unnecessary worries of, you know, just having air blow on them from outside and
Yeah.
feel vulnerable, and but recognizing, no, these are the things, these are the ways that the disease is transmitted. This is what we can do about it, and this is what we are doing about it, and now we're going on with other things. um,
And some of the things that you're going to share to both of our audiences does that cover a lot of those, or that age appropriate discussions?
well, some of those are more in the links and resources,
Okay, perfect.
because there are just so many things, and they're more experiential, and so it's hard to just talk about them. But I think the first step is having the conversation, because
Okay.
some parents are afraid to even acknowledge the presence of this pandemic, and I think that's a mistake,
Yeah.
because we have to honor our kids and their ability to, and their need to really be in the loop with us,
Mm.
at the same time as we wisely filter the ways we're sharing. So it can be such a temptation just to be like, oh my goodness, come look at this, you know.
Yeah.
And because we are just having a reaction, and a news article or a YouTube video is kind of stirring something within us, and it's our natural reaction just to say, hey, come here, look at this.
Yeah.
But we have to be careful and not share things that may be more disturbing.
Well, I like what you're saying too. Of in the opposite of that are the parents that are, and I've heard of from these now as well. Of they don't want to talk about it at all. And if you're doing
Right.
that, it's in essence. And I know this isn't maybe exactly the right parallel, but I have so many people that never have had the talk, you know, with their
Right.
kids, and so their kids go find out the information from friends or online. So that similar concept. We want our kids we do want them to come to us so that we can be the one who helps filter that information, or we have that discussion with them.
Mhm.
So, but I like what you're saying. There's that balance though of having the conversation and not just putting, you know, our blinders on, but also not saying, oh my gosh, like this is crazy, right? This is, I,
Right.
and then kind of if our kids now feeling overwhelmed or that sort of thing.
And along with what we were talking about of helping kids connect with why they're doing what they're doing, I think this helps kids really be able to feel like the heroes that they are. You know, not in, it hasn't been in all periods of history that kids can do heroic things that actually save lives. You know, our kids want to be firemen and policemen and doctors, but they can actually save lives by choosing to stay home, by washing their hands, by you know, following these guidelines. And you know, I've been thinking about the quote by Gandhi that talks about, you know, it's easy to be in a crowd, but you know, it takes courage to stand alone. Basically, I'm paraphrasing it, but
I love
this
that.
is one of those times when we can say to our kids, we need to stand alone bravely, and we are actually saving lives by doing this, and it's true. But I want to take just a minute to honor the audience members here and the sacrifices that they're making for the public good. I know there are, you know, kindergartners that just love their teachers, and they might not get to go say goodbye to them, or college students that have worked so hard to get in programs abroad, and they're just being canceled. And there are parents who have worked so hard to schedule these vacations, these
Yeah.
special experiences for their kids, and having to give that up for right now. But I want to just say thank you, and it is worth it. And you're being heroic and brave in these adjustments that you're making. And I think as we can connect with those reasons, then suddenly we're empowered. We're not just victims of, oh, this is so annoying and this is so hard, but we can feel ennobled by the choice we're making, and actually make it more of a gift that we're giving, to maybe somebody that we imagine in our mind among a vulnerable population that we care about, that we're actually handing our sacrifice to them as a gift.
Wow. I love that. And I mean, making me get a little teary eyed. I know you've got 8 kids. I mean, I don't know where all of those are. I have a daughter who's a senior in high school, and we're learning, yesterday prom is canceled, and next is, I would imagine, graduation and those things. And it breaks your heart as a parent. And so I appreciate what you shared there. Yeah.
So, and I think as parents, one of the first things we can do is anchor ourselves, and do those things that help us feel centered and anchored. And maybe it means revisiting some strategies that we have been able to come away from or haven't really relied upon in the past, but it will be necessary to fortify ourselves as parents and come back to those healthy practices, those taking some time to recharge spiritually and physically and emotionally, and kids really look to us to be that anchor, and particularly young children who may not even be able to verbally express their perception of the tension that is looming about, or understand the conversation. They feel it.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, I have training in pediatric hypnosis, and one thing that that was so profound to me was that you could actually get a very young child, like a baby, in a very relaxed, calm state by involving the mother in a relaxation exercise.
Wow.
That the child, matches the breathing pattern, and the muscle tension or looseness of the mother. And so if we can take care of ourselves, we'll be about 75% there of
Wow.
taking care of our kids.
So how does one do that then if maybe they haven't had that practice? I love what you're saying about maybe now is the time to reconnect, spiritually, or reconnect to those foundational principles that got us to a point that of strength, because life is crazy and hectic. And even in this, what feels extremely hectic, I mean, you're absolutely right. We need to kind of go back to that spiritual grounding, or that foundational or fundamental principles. So if someone has gotten away from that, or what you're talking about now with even the pediatric hypnosis, or I don't know, where do you go next? Do you have experiences, examples, things that people can where do they start?
Yes. So I think, why don't we talk about these strategies from a mind, body, spirit standpoint? So that's how I address things in my consulting practice as an integrative pediatrician. And so first, let's talk about strategies of the mind. As a therapist,
Yeah.
you are very well schooled and, have as your expertise cognitive behavioral therapy and the ideas of cognitive distortions
Yeah.
that can come in and kind of hijack us in some ways. And so I think every person should know about what these typical cognitive distortions are that particularly can put us at risk for higher anxiety in this pandemic.
Yeah.
And so maybe we could review those briefly and talk about an example, like a few of those, an example of each, and then how we could fix that thought.
That would be
So,
great. It's funny you saying this. I don't know why I feel this need to, as if I'm in show and tell, but I mean, I'm actually preparing an episode, whether it's next week or the week after. And I have this list of the, 10 cognitive distortions, because I feel like I love that you were going there, because this is something I've been dealing with a lot this week.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
so important. And these are not just distortions that people who go to therapy need to know about. These are distortions that we all fall to. And so in my practice, I talk to the kids about these being tricky thoughts, where the voice of worry is trying to trick us into, looking at things inaccurately.
Yeah.
And so I think the three top of the tricky thoughts or cognitive distortions that we're at risk for here are catastrophic thinking,
Yes.
the all or nothing, black and white thinking, and also the filtering, looking specifically at all the negative. And so for example, catastrophic thinking, we can think, oh no, we're all gonna die, this is and that's really like maybe the end fear in the back of all our minds, this apocalyptic moment. But really, how can we fix that thought? We can think about, what is our experience right now? Right now, I have food for dinner. Right now, I'm healthy. Right now, I have my family around me. So thinking about what is my true experience right now, and instead of asking disempowering questions like what if, asking what now, what can I do now with the circumstances in front of me.
And I want to, if I can just jump in super quick.
Please.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely schooled in cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. And I do a lot on my podcast about an offshoot of that, which is acceptance and commitment therapy, which grew out of CBT. And I think it just frames even cognitive distortions well, and we talked about this earlier, perfectly normal to have the thoughts and feelings and emotions, because you're a human who has had the experience that you had up to that point. And then I love that, but what if? And I love how you're saying that. And in ACT and acceptance and commitment therapy, I love this concept where we're not even arguing if that statement is true or false. Maybe it is true, maybe it's not, but it's exactly what you said. We'll note that, and then let's come back to present. Well, what now? I love that. So it is a nice, so anybody that's feeling like, but I really think about this stuff a lot. It's like, okay, that's wonderful. That's you. So we're not, so now, but we're still going to try to come back to present. So I love not the what if. The what ifs happen all the time, but what now? Oh, I'm taking that one from you, Dr. Mary.
Also with the all or nothing thinking, I think about this particularly with mothers, and maybe that's because that's my context, but I think a lot of moms are going to be at risk of thinking, oh, my house is just this chaotic place. I'm just such a bad mom. I'm not able to create this haven of education and productivity and peace. And but really, it's all on a continuum, and it's all just a process. And we can say, so what went well today, and what needs to happen differently for tomorrow? And so I think that is one place where we can stop ourselves from being, distorted in our thoughts, like just not letting ourselves go there of trying to say, either I'm an awesome mom or I'm a terrible mom,
Yeah. And then one of the cognitive distortions that when I didn't realize we were going to go here, and I love this, is I am so aware of, is that discounting the positive. It's, rejecting the positive experience, because there are going to be wins throughout the day. And there will be. But then I always say that people get into but then I did this. But, and don't discount those positive experiences. I mean, those are what we want to build off of.
And instead of focusing on like, what are all these things we're giving up? Oh no, this is so tragic. Yes, we can focus on that and honor that, but at the same time say, wow, what are we learning? What are the lessons here? We're actually we've been given this gift of just turning inward to our families, something that we actually kind of like often verbalize that we wish for.
Absolutely.
Not like we'd wish for it to be this
Right.
way, but in some ways, this has given us a wonderful opportunity to just pause and slow down and turn inward. And looking for that, also looking for and being grateful for the opportunity to be kind of shaken out of our illusion that we're in control somehow. um, so and and so all these things are gifts, and so if we can see the gifts as well as the struggle.
I had a wonderful session yesterday with a guy who he didn't come in with this thought, but we processed it till he got to the point where he said, I'm always wanting more free time. And now that I have the free time, I'm realizing now I want to go back to the office, and because I think I'll really be productive. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And both of those we recognize that, and it's not being present, he's just not being in that
Yeah.
moment. Yeah.
Right.
And there's that experiential avoidance of, well, if I had more free time, then I would do these things down the road, or and it was a nice moment. We really felt that one in the session.
That's wonderful. And it just brings to mind, I have a son who's on a mission in Thailand right now, and he is under a quarantine situation. And so, this young man who is so enthusiastic to just go out there and serve people. And, he has to stay in his apartment all day long. But he is really an example to me of being present. He's cleaning his apartment. He's learning how to do a one-handed handstand. He's learning how to play the piano. He's studying Thai. He's, doing all kinds of scriptural and faith-based study and reaching out virtually in the ways that are possible. And so I really admire his example of just being able to be in that moment. And in some ways, I was thinking about the Buddhist tradition that is prevalent in Thailand, and how some of us in our society, we actually pay money to have people have us be in these isolation retreats or silence retreats. And this is one that's kind of being imposed upon us, but it can actually be a spiritual teacher for us.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's wonderful. That is. Do you want to talk about any other additional cognitive distortions, or
well, maybe just the one we'll touch upon one more of jumping to conclusions, like my neighbor's buying 10 packs of toilet paper, so I need to buy 10 packs of toilet paper too. So we can just look and trust our situation, and our solutions may look different than other people's. So,
and I love, and in the jumping to conclusions on the notes I'm putting together for this future podcast, I do have the all-time favorites: mind reading and fortune telling. Right?
Yes.
That's just people just assuming that we know. I don't know. Maybe the 10 toilet paper family has 10 kids with very active bowels. I don't know.
Right. So maybe they actually do need it. Maybe it doesn't mean that we need the toilet paper.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Okay. No, I love that one. And I'm grateful you brought up cognitive distortions, and I'm going to do more with that down the road. So thank you.
Wonderful.
That's perfect.
And I think, I also work with families on mindfulness and I think, and imagery, and the power of the images that we hold. And so I'll put some links to wonderful resources that have been donated and shared generously. And, also, a link to my course that is a resource for kids and teens and families wanting to do a more organized practice of these strategies. But
so, okay, are you going to do one now? I'm scared.
Well, maybe let's wait till we get to the spirit strategies, because Perfect. I think that the mindfulness, self-compassion also fits in that category. So let's move a little bit to body strategies.
Okay.
So I think that even though we're in the house, we don't have to sit on the couch. I know this is the virtual couch, but
more, by the way, when you said this, yes, it would be very aware. Okay.
Yes. So there are a lot of things that we can do with our body that really change the way that our body feels. And I love yoga because it's like a metaphor for everything we want emotionally. It promotes strength, flexibility, balance, also makes us sit in sort of uncomfortable positions and just tolerate it a little bit. And these are the things we need to do emotionally. And so I love yoga for that reason. And I'm trained in a program called Yoga Calm that actually uses yoga to take kids from one place, the emotion that they're at. And so starts with yoga poses that can, relate to the emotion that they have, and then slowly brings them to a different emotion that's more healthy or desired at that moment. And we know that, certain ways of moving our body help us feel more empowered, and certain ways of moving our body help us feel more comforted. Usually the closing and bending, things that we naturally feel to do, like, we all just want to get in the fetal position and in a blanket.
Right.
That's actually a very wise thing that our body wants to do. It's a calming activity. And so using things like yoga can be very powerful. Also, diaphragmatic breathing is a wonderful tool. Tapping, the EFT technique, can be very helpful to process trauma and stress. We won't get into that, but I will, on my channel, also be doing some, specific videos on these techniques as well.
That would be great. I have to, I know we don't have a whole lot of time, but EFT, I talk about that as a couples therapy modality, emotionally focused therapy. But that EFT you're talking about is it freedom tapping? I forget what the E is there. Is it emotional freedom?
It is still, it's still emotional freedom technique. It's still,
Well, but it's it has to do with literal tapping. I've had a client or two that hear about me talk about EFT for couples. And I had a woman come in and do we finished the session. She said, "When are you going to start tapping on me?"
So yes, I am talking about the tapping, but they still do call it the emotional freedom technique.
Yeah.
And so, but yes, it's actually the physical tapping on acupressure points that change your internal energy, and it's an evidence-based method that really can change the way we or enable us to process emotions in a physical way. So also exercise. Like I said, we don't have to just sit on the couch when we're home. There are so many online resources where you can learn yoga, you can do a online workout. Depending on your locality, you may be able to go out to a more remote place with your family and run and play and do things like that. But we know that exercise brings endorphins to us. And those are the feel-good chemicals that heal us. And I love the work of Bessel van der Kolk, who he wrote a book called Your Body Keeps the Score. And often we do carry our stresses within our body, and we don't even realize it. So let's just acknowledge, just for a minute right now, how we're feeling. So as we're talking about coronavirus, just notice inside your body if you feel like you're carrying that stress or worry about coronavirus in any particular place. Some people might feel it like, oh yeah, I feel it in my shoulders. So let your shoulders drop, let your brows soften, and take some deep, gentle breaths. And see if there's any particular place, or do you feel kind of a aching or an emptiness in your heart, or do you feel some tension in your stomach? Just notice if there's any place in your body that you can pinpoint that you're feeling this stress. And usually there is. Usually we can be like, I didn't think about that, but yes. And so if we can just allow some of that extra tension to just drop down and drop away, that can be really helpful. And just notice it and acknowledge it and let it go, and even maybe put a hand over that place where we're feeling it, just to acknowledge it with some kindness and compassion, and to say, it's okay, you're here, I see you, I hear you. And then it can kind of be free. It's sent its message to us, and it can go away. So
I love that. I do. I think that's where people do feel like they want to ignore that. And what is it? The thought suppression, even the emotional suppression, is not a productive way to work. I mean, because your body wants to be heard, and it wants to let you know. And that's where I always feel like, bless your body's heart. I mean, it really does think it's doing you a favor with anxiety, or it thinks it's doing you a favor with all these things. So I love that. Acknowledge it, give it a pat even.
Mhm.
and it doesn't have to go away right away.
Exactly. It can stay.
Yeah. Hey, I'm just going to put it over here to the side for a little while so I can get
Right.
back to what I'm doing. Right.
Right. And if it's been allowed to give its message, then it's more likely to move on.
And I promise people hearing this is the part where I tell you a decade ago when I was even still, I mean, I was a therapist full fledged, but if I would have heard you and I talking about this back then, I would have fast forwarded, I would have,
Right.
and it is so true though. And even as you are doing this exercise right now, I already did my daily headspace this morning, and I want, and I'm not trying to flex, as the kids say these days, but I felt so calm because it's such a wonderful practice. And even if go watch the YouTube video that we're doing right now, when you just breathed in, I breathed in, we did kind of sync up there, and I just felt good.
Mhm,
It is. It's
mhm.
nice. So
That's right. And I did some yoga this morning,
okay.
and I did some praying,
Yeah.
and I did a little tapping. So,
Right. Right.
we can feel like, um, we don't need it. We can get on without it, but really, if you try it, you might like it. So I just like to tell a little story about, when I was in high school, I was a sprinter. I loved fast running. I was on the track team. And later in my life, when I got married, my husband was a distance runner. And I
Mm.
just always told him, I am not cut out for this. I'm not a distance runner. I'm not cut out for it. But then he started asking me questions like, well, when was the last time you drank anything? Have you eaten anything? Have you? And I realized that I was always running in a depleted state. And
Wow.
I never knew that, and I had thought to myself that I didn't have endurance for distance running, and it was because I was not resourced.
Yeah.
And I think that if we give ourselves the resources and take the time, then we will have so much more endurance for this, whatever this pandemic brings.
Oh, Dr. Mayer, that's perfect. I tell you, would you be willing to come back in the near future? I want to talk to you about 8 kids and time strategies and being a
Yes,
nutrition. And so I'd love to have you back on again soon, if that
yes,
would be okay.
that would. Can we talk just for a minute about spirit strategies? Do you
Oh,
have a
let's
minute?
do it. Yeah,
Okay. Okay. I know you have clients,
I
so
was just I'd be very vulnerable, right? Yeah, I have a client in just a few minutes, but yeah, let's do it. Feel free. That'd be great.
okay, so I think that it's so important to acknowledge the power of spirituality at this time. And maybe we've all sort of forgotten in our own ways or come away from our spiritual traditions, and we all do.
Mhm.
We get distracted from what's most important to us, and it's there's no shame in coming back.
Yeah.
There's no shame in reaching back at those things that have brought us peace in the past. And there's so many wonderful online worship resources, and so I'm going to share some of those on my site, from many different denominations, and the ways that many different communities are coming together to support each other spiritually. And it's just inspiring to me to see people acknowledge spirituality as an important factor. Um, Brene Brown just did this, you know, prayer gathering
Mm.
where, you know, tens of thousands of people or more really gathered to come together. Different entrepreneurial in different entrepreneurial spaces, they're saying, let's have a day of prayer. Let's
Yeah.
and it's very powerful to come together spiritually. And even if you don't connect with an organized religion, there are spiritual practices that what spirituality does, it gives meaning, purpose, and connects us with a community,
Yeah.
and connects us with power that's greater than ourselves. One of my favorite mindfulness resources is um, shared by Dr. Tara Brock, and I will share that on my site. But it's this half-day retreat that we can participate in being mindful and go through different meditation exercises. So this is another way, through mindfulness, meditation, activism, that we can connect with spirituality.
No,
So these are all wonderful, powerful tools.
no, I'm glad. I appreciate you, hanging in there with me there to get to that,
Yeah,
because you're absolutely right. And I feel like going back to, it's never too late to kind of go back to some of those
right.
foundational principles. And I know even in therapy, I hear often that
Mhm.
I can't, I can't do that, or even if they're feeling like they're disconnected from their, from God or family systems, or it's never too late. I mean, it's absolutely not. That's a story my brain is trying to fuse to because it's path of least resistance. But, so I'm grateful you shared that. So where can people find you?
So on Instagram, you can follow me at Dr. Mary Wilde, so DrMaryWilde, and there's a link there to my website, which is drmarywilde.com, and there I have a list of resources that I offer, as well as just some of my favorite informational and helpful resources for families at this time of COVID-19. So I'd love to connect with you further. And Tony, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much
on your show. It's been so wonderful. And let's talk again.
Yeah, we will have you on again soon.
Yes.
Thanks so much, Dr. Mary.
Sounds great.